Hello and welcome to this session. My name is Ben Cook. I work for Management Studio, and today I want to talk to you about the Application Confidence Engine. Before I do that, let's talk a little bit about what the challenge is that we have. The challenge with applications is keeping on top of them. We typically have a connector that pulls in discovered applications into our tooling on a daily basis. What this ends up as is a vast number of applications that need to be managed. It might be that some are in scope, it might be that some are out of scope, and some might need rationalizing. Now, I know from experience that this vast number of applications actually takes quite a lot of time for customers to do. And certainly when I'm training new customers up, I find that I can spend many days showing them how to do application rationalization. And a lot of this is down to the fact that I've done this for many years. Some of our customers have too, and others haven't. Now, where there's a lack of application knowledge, or perhaps we've got internally developed apps that maybe I don't know about, it becomes very difficult to understand which applications are in scope, which are out of scope, and which should be rationalized. And that's where the Application Confidence Engine is here to help. What we're doing here is we're taking decisions made by existing customers, we're uploading those into the cloud in an anonymized way, and then we're able to make confidence ratings on the applications that new customers get, or new applications that existing customers get, so that they can either use those confidence ratings to manually rationalize applications or to automatically rationalize applications, and that includes accepting and rejecting applications. What this means is customers can save a vast amount of time on managing those applications. They can keep on top of those new applications that are coming into their estate on a daily basis, and they can spend the time doing other more important tasks. In terms of the sort of numbers that the Application Confidence Engine can process today, we typically find that of the discovered apps, around 70% have a confidence rating. Of that 70%, around 60% are in scope, so they're the auto accepts, and then 40% are out of scope. And then of those 60%, we can roll up versions to various thresholds depending on the settings you put into the tooling. And of the apps that don't have a rating, so those are either very rarely used apps or internally developed apps, we can again do the auto roll up on those. So where you've got multiple versions, you can roll those up into a single version, again choosing the version threshold that's suitable for your environment. So let's take a look at how this works. Here I've got Management Studio with ACE enabled, and first of all we can see in my dashboard I've got 1,412 applications, none of which are ready. These are all out of scope at the moment because they are in what we call the pending view. So if I come into my applications, you'll see what I mean. This is typical of a new instance where in the accepted application status we've got no apps at all. However, if I turn on my pending applications, we'll see those newly discovered applications which have come in via that inventory connector, such as MECM or Config Manager. So here I can see that list of applications in here. Now, something to note, if we look at the vendors, and if we focus on Adobe, there's quite a few iterations of Adobe. If we look at the versions of the products, we'll see some quite unusual versions. And this is because vendors are not always consistent in the way they do versioning. And here we can see this version here has got quite a bit of text in it. So as part of our application management, this is really outside of the rationalization process. It's also important to be able to clean up all of those names and versions. And that's something else that ACE can do for us. So how do we do it? Well, first of all, just to make this a bit easier, I'm just going to focus on the Adobe applications. So I'm going to search for Adobe. I've got 107 in my database. I'm going to select them all. I'll right click, and the new option ACE Recommendations is what I'm going to click on here, and that opens up in a new window. Now, there are two main things that ACE can do for us. One is application rationalization and one is normalization. Now, the normalization piece is what I typically do first, so I'm going to turn off rationalization. And normalization is basically what we call cleaning up those vendor names, app names and versions and so on. We also are now adding a category to applications, and you can see the category here in that first column. If I look at my vendor names, we can see those variations. Now, where I see a yellow item in here, that means That's a recommendation. That's a new piece of data that we're recommending. And if I scroll down and look at my vendors, further down my list, I'll see those different versions of Adobe, like Adobe Ink. And what we're doing is we're saying, let's change that to Adobe. Adobe Systems, let's change that to Adobe. Again, the names of the apps are going to be tidied up. So in this case, we're going to drop the Adobe from the name and just call it Reader and Acrobat Manager, because Adobe is actually in the vendor name. And then in versioning, you can see we're going to be cleaning up those versions here. And here we're taking out the quote marks. So this is the cleaning up. How do we apply these suggested changes? In this case, I'm going to do them all. I could, though, do them one by one with this toggle switch. To do them all, what we do is I select all, I right click, and I'm going to approve these recommendations. Now I'm doing normalization, and I'm going to add the category and then fix the vendor, the name and the version by clicking that. They will turn green. Now that hasn't actually made the change in the data yet. To do that, I need to click Apply Approvals. That's now applying those changes. And if I close this window, what we'll see is the vendor names have been cleaned up. So that's the window closed. I'll refresh my grid. And if I look in here, we can see that everything is now Adobe. If I look at my versions, we'll see those have been cleaned up as well. So a much cleaner set of versions. So that's the normalization piece done. I'm now going to do some rationalization. I'm going to come back into ACE recommendations, and I'm going to turn my rationalization on. And here we can see the recommendations for rationalization. If we look at the first application here, we can see that it's currently in pending and the ACE recommendation is reject. 71% of other customers are doing that action. For this application here, again, we're suggesting reject because 80% of customers are making that action. And that's because these are components of a bigger application. However, for something like Adobe Acrobat, we're saying for this particular version, we should accept it because 95% of customers are doing that. The version above is interesting. It's a slightly lower version, and you can see the recommendation is that we rationalize this, and it's going to rationalize it to this application here, which is Adobe Acrobat, and it's actually the version we looked at just a moment ago. So this, it's being suggested, will be rationalized to this. Now, I've got my version thresholds set up so that only major versions will be rolled up. So that means all the 11s will be rolled up to a single entry, all the 15s, all the 19s, and so on. And again, we can see here we've got a 22 and another 22. Now those are all being rolled up to this version here. Now I can, again, take these recommendations one by using the toggle, or I can do them all in one go by clicking Select All, right click, Approve. This time it's rationalization, and I'm going to choose all of them. Again, those will turn green, and again I need to click Apply Approvals so that those changes are made to my database. I'll now close that window, and what I'll do is I'll turn off my pending applications, and that will refresh the grid and we'll start to see what is in scope. Now we started with 107 Adobe apps. We've now got 14 in the accepted view. And this is our cleaned up view. So we've got clean vendor names, clean app names, clean versions. We've got an app category in here now. And you can see that on the right hand side. And the other thing is we've got a nice rationalized set of applications. So I've only got one version of Acrobat 10, one of 11, one of 22, one of Elements 11, because where we found multiple major versions, we have rationalized them down. Now previously, this piece of work might have taken me half an hour to do, maybe a little bit longer, and that's just 100 apps done in maybe a minute or less. So you can start to see the kind of time savings you're going to make. Now, of course, I can come into my rationalized apps, pending apps, rejected apps, so I can see the full set. And you'll start to see in here, there's going to be a variety of app statuses, because the ACE engine has, for example, rejected some apps, and here we go. It's rationalized some, it's accepted some, and so on. And this is really, really powerful. Now, I've been doing this all manually, but you can also automate this process. And in the configuration for ACE, you're able to set thresholds. For example, only reject applications after they've been in the pending view for 2 weeks, and if they've got a certain number of users or less. So this process can be fully automated. And one last thing to look at is if I come back into my dashboard, we'll start to see if I reload the dashboard that I can see my ACE categories in the lower chart here. And there we go. I hope that's been useful. If you'd like more information about ACE, please get in touch.